Hi, and welcome to Absolute Nianema once again, the series that's supposed to be about cinema files within Arknights, but I keep getting sidetracked by interesting 5-star operators, and today is no exception to that rule. We're talking about Hadia, which is an interesting case for this series, as we are currently talking about an operator that's 6 months out from global. I normally don't like to do detailed videos on this sort of thing, because I like to source my own footage and also have like on-hand experience of the operator I'm talking about. But well, today is special because it's my 25th birthday, so I get the special privilege of choosing what gets to be the exception. Not like we've already been doing that, but shush. If you are wondering what I am doing right now while you are watching this video on release, I'm currently in the city hitting up all my favorite bookstores before I find my way to an arcade so I can play Maimai all day long. Because yes, I am a slave to the rhythm. Anyway, Hadia is my exception because I feel like I made a very strong conclusion in the TP video about the importance of the rarity she occupies, but I feel like a great example of that point is Hadia, an operator in a new subclass that is trying out a new mechanic. And I feel like this new mechanic has opened the floodgates to even more interesting operator design across multiple classes, so I really want to discuss her on her own merits and its implications. Yes, I am choosing to be hyper self-indulgent by inflating my own sense of self by thinking I can handle such a nuanced topic, but it's my birthday, so I can have that right. Also, since this is a look ahead, less of an actual analysis, if you can call what I'm doing an analysis, I will be doing the super thing and borrowing footage from other creators for this. I will have the name of the videos and the original upload in the corner when I am using them because of that. So Hadia is a new red cert 5-star operator that will come with the Half Annie event that brings us the latest form of Vanguard power creep, another chance to laugh at my poor carnelian, and a blastcaster that won't hold a candle to Ifrit once again, but actually has an excuse to underperform, unlike the last two. Hadia is the more interesting of the lot because of her class. She's the first foray into a new archetype for Arknights, which, with it being the latest addition to the guardification effect, Mercenary, which is just the guard version of a merchant, but definitely easier to use. While merchants will bleed you dry for DP while they exist on the battlefield as a pay-to-use version of an executor, mercenaries will simply ask you to pay them a chunk of DP to enhance their skills, which I think is a more interesting way to use the pay-to-use mechanic of merchants. In fact, you can argue they were testing this sort of thing with Figurino from the last half-Annie event with his S2 being a pay-to-use skill, and while it was a good skill, its hefty DP cost paired with the merchant class subtrait, made him borderline unusable without several DP generating batteries strapped to him. Hadia, in comparison, feels like they managed to find a good balance of those two kind of things they were trying to do with Victorino by reducing its usage cost, making it an optional thing, and not pairing it with a class trait that will suck you drier than a Honkai Star Rail banner. Anyway, for mercenaries, this gimmick is called an equipment response, I believe, if I'm reading this wiki page right. Basically, while in her skill, she can pay DP through this funky new UI element they added, where it attaches a new effect to the currently activated skill. We will talk about the potential of this new UI at the end, because right now I just want to focus on her talent. Descendants of the Wilderness, which is what Google Translate is telling me what its name is, because the wiki contributors hasn't translated yet, is her talent. And unlike Bina, who was in a similar position as Hadia as a welfare 5-star for an entire new subclass, she actually knows what the game plan for her subclass is. Basically, whenever she consumes DP from either deployment activating her skill or activating her equipment response, she will stun nearby enemies and gain a permanent stacking attack buff. At E2 is a 4% with a cap of 5, which means you're reaching about 20% attack buff, which is neat. I really like this art because it understands how the class should be played and acts like a great introduction to what you can expect from the class. A cheap DPS blocker. A Hadia E2's DP cost starts at like 10 DP, and she's a 2-block operator, which makes her like a good Vound starter. The fact that she gets to start off the Vound straight off the bat with a 4% attack buff and a 2-second stun on deploy means she can very safely clear out threats while you're still in the setup phase with your Vanguards. Yes, you can use an agent or a pioneer for that role, but the stacking attack buff gives you incentive to keep using her over them. The fact that she can slowly scale over the course of the mission with this talent is good incentive to keep her around, because, well, once you're past the setup and considering how easy it is to re-trigger that stun, she continues to, well, serve a role as a stoller, which is good. It's just good, solid talent design, which we often don't see in this variety, especially for welfares. Of course, since this talent is reliant on the nature of her skills, we should judge her on those merits as well. Google Translate is telling me the name for S1 is Improved Stand Tactics, and just like Bina again, she's playing it safe. Basically, you activate the skill and you get a defense buff, and then you can pay Den DP to attach an attack buff to it. The numbers are also very safe since at skill level 7 it's 70% for both values, while her MV makes it 100% for once again both values. The only interesting part about it outside the equipment response gimmick is the requirement to activate the response. If I am understanding this correctly, you need to effectively wait for the skill to charge up again during the duration to attach the equipment response to it at the end. Like at skill level 7, it's a 24 SP cost skill, which means you need to wait like 24 seconds to reactivate it and attach an attack buff that only lasts 6 seconds at most. Envy only makes it slightly better by lowering it to 20, which means you're at most getting about 10 seconds of the defensive buff. I'm really hoping that the wiki entry is missing something, because this seems really bad on paper. Like, looking at some footage of the skill, it seems like it has its own separate SP cost that recharges on the side, which does make the skill more usable. Anyway, I think the skill's neat, but very safe, which I would expect from a class in Generation Welfare, and this feels like them just testing the waters, how they want to use the equipment response. And out of the two tests they conduct with Hadia, I think the second one is more well done, so let's just move on to that. Sword Horn Edge, which is, yes, the Google translation once again, is OS2, and I think this is the course they should chase with Mercs. Basically, you pay 10 DP to extend your range by 2 tiles, gain a fair attack buff, and strike 3 enemies at once, with equipment response letting you pay 15 DP to add 15 more seconds to the duration. Its base duration is 20 seconds, so by paying a collective 25 DP, you get the full skill duration of 35 seconds. You may call this expensive, but considering the Figurino tax we had previously, I'll gladly take this, especially when it synergizes so great with our talent. Since you can choose when you want to extend the duration, you effectively have control over 2 different stuns, with the first stun being tied to its first activation and the second stun being tied to the equipment response. Knowing that, the buff is reasonably large at skill level 7, which already with a 135%, especially when you pair with the ability to hit 3 enemies at once from range. I am going to be generous and add the fully stacked talent buff for my mass for this, but yeah, you can see how good this is for her, especially when you pursue the M3 for the 150% buff. I think this is a fantastic skill, and not only because its usability, but the design behind it is very promising. Yes, the equipment response is ultimately very expensive for the payoff, but the idea of paying to use the skill to re-trigger the talent and then having the ability to pay again quickly to re-trigger it is interesting. I think if they further refine the DP cost of the equipment response in future mercs, this sort of skill design can be very interesting later down the line. I think we can all agree that while she has interesting ideas behind her, she's only played safe, which is the standard for the first of a new class like this. As I discussed in the last video, 5 stars in a special position of being able to test out new mechanics, and Hadia is ultimately testing how they should approach the equipment response system, just like how Bina tested the HP loss cost and how they should approach the substitute gimmick. But I think Hadia is more than just that. While in the short term, it looks like Hadia is merely a glimpse into what we can expect from the next collab. I think in the long term, the new UI elements she brings to the gameplay will open the floodgates to new design possibilities for future subclasses. For example, what if they use this for something like Chongyu's S1 as a better way to do overcharge, like let you cash in on the overcharge early at the cost of a debuff of some sorts? What if we did something like Mumu clone getting new skills by not locking it behind a clone target, but a UI choice, making it easier to make use of the toolbox options without having to wait for the clone to recharge its frankly long ass SP cost just to change the clone target. Like, what if we also like tried to make an ammo focus operator who can choose what sort of ammo they want to use through that UI? This simple UI addition opens the floodgates for creative future design decisions. Yes, this can lead to a new level of over-design, as we are now giving subclasses even more design room than their predecessors, but I have a degree of faith in Hyperglyph's design team. For many, Hadia is a fancy new operator that's a sample taster for the next Monster Hunter collab, but for me, Hadia represents an exciting future for operator design, and I'm excited for that. Also, it's a sample taster for the next Monster Hunter collab, because, surely they will give me my beloved Great Bow with some much needed representation with a Ranger for this collab. Anyway, I'm going to go back to warming up for all day Maimai now by playing DJMax, so have a great day, and don't say happy birthday in the comments. It's very embarrassing to make this video for my birthday. I don't need to be more reason to be flustered and embarrassed, so just save your effort, please.